Hi, good morning. It's not morning for anybody. Maybe in Hawaii it's morning. Um, it's noon. It's noon here. Hi, everybody. I'm always excited for these conversations, but I'm especially excited for this conversation today with Yolanda Williams of Parenting Decolonized, who is a dear friend of mine, and we have been in connection, I want to say almost 2 years now, and she's just one of the most incredible people I've ever met. We don't live close to each other, but I wish we did because I feel like I would just be hanging out with her all the time because she's just brilliant. So we're going to bring her on. I'm going to just check really quick to see if she has requested. Oh, here we go. I hope, unless IG glitches, I hope it does not. Hello, happy Friday, happy Friday. Hello, beautiful.
Hey girl, how are you?
I'm so good. How are you? Let me move this.
Really good. I just came back in from running around, so
What are you doing? Are you gardening?
no, my dog had surgery. My dog had her name is Princess. She's actually over there on the sofa there. Princess had a lipoma on the side of her neck, and so it was non-cancerous, like tumor, fatty tissue thing. And so we got it removed. My sister and I paid for it together. And it's so funny because we did not grow up doing the stuff. We grew up, my mom was like, the dog is sick, and then the dog would not be there the next day.
Oh,
So this is just so new for us to be like spending so much money on the dog, but she had surgery and she has a big incision around her neck. And so I had to run out and get her some pain medication and then try to feed myself. And yeah.
oh my gosh. That shit is so expensive too. We have to get surgery for our dog I think it's next week actually on the 3rd. And when we first got her, she tried to jump, like she tried to, I don't know what she was trying to do, but I like got home and she was like in a corner in a ball, like her knee was all messed up and broken.
I know.
And we think that she was like trying to get into the house and she was
Hmm.
around that time, so her bones were
Hmm.
wrong. So we think that she broke that, and then we went through the initial surgery, got like the metal out of it a couple years ago, and now we have to go back because she's been limping, like she's not using it at all. And so like arthritis,
Oh, yeah.
she's like 7 or 8 years old now, so she's, I don't know, it's heartbreaking.
It is. Their family. And when we got her, I was pregnant with Gia, and we wanted a dog. And my sister and I went together to the, what is it called? The shelter, I guess, and adopted her. And she was a mess. She had just had surgery. She had a tumor in her head. She had heartworms. And so, and she was 7 when we got her. And that was in 2017. So like she's definitely elderly, but we just,
she's a senior.
want to give her the best life. This is part of that whole culture thing.
Yeah,
Just redoing things that I would never like, this wasn't something that we did growing up. My mom, like I said, we wake up, the dogs just wouldn't be there. The
yeah,
cat just wouldn't be there anymore. And there would be no discussion around it. We just wouldn't have that pet anymore. And we had to figure out how to like move on and not ask
yeah.
questions. When we did, we got yelled at. So
Yeah, I remember having, this is really interesting that you bring this up because it's making me think about my mom. My mom now loves my dog, but at first she was like, I don't know why you leave your dog in the house, like keep dogs are for outside. But she grew up in like a ranch where like there was a ton of dogs everywhere, just but they wouldn't live with you. They like might.
yeah, they lived outside.
And so now
Dogs inside.
she loves the dog, but I'm just like, this is different even for her, right? Like
Cultural.
that experience too, where like they got me like a husky one year, and I came home one day and she was gone, and I had no idea. No one told me what happened.
Yeah.
No one said like we're gonna have to give her away because of what.
Hmm.
I have no idea actually to this day what the reason
Yeah.
was. So
And then, as if I think we had similar upbringings where you just didn't ask questions. Like you just knew there were certain things you just had to accept in your life and not ask questions about it. And I mean, I guess that's the topic of discussion today, like these cultural things that keep people or maybe roadblocks for people along the way to conscious parenting. Because I mean, if your child is growing up with a pet and then the pet is not there one day,
yeah,
that's huge. Like, when we would have, I mean, we had a lot of pets growing up. They never stayed. Like if they If they were a nuisance, if they barked too much, next thing you know, they weren't there. We had cats, had pets our whole life, but it just was a different vibe. There was no vets. There was no, medicines. It was when they got sick, they went away.
Yeah.
And and to not explain that, because I remember when before I moved to Arkansas when I was pregnant, my cat got hit by a car. His name was, I called him Poo Poo. His name was Lee. And he got hit by a car, or he was either hit by a car or he got bit, because there was nothing wrong with his body. But we just found him in the street. He was an indoor outdoor cat. And I was devastated. Like that was my baby. I loved that cat. And I just remember like grieving so hard around this animal. And I just realized like I didn't get a chance to do any of that grieving. Like we just had to get over it. There was no grieving. There was no discussing it. This animal who was a part of the family for years wasn't there anymore, and you just had to suck it up.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what a lot of our childhood was, just sucking shit up. Just sucking it up.
I love
and
that you brought up grief, because my friend Paulina, like that's her jam. She talks like Latinx grief. She talks about grief, but so much of it comes up. And I actually was talking to Cindy about this. So much of your grief that's been repressed comes up while you're parenting.
Yeah.
In the moment, right? And you're just like, I don't know what's happening. And it's like at the root of it, a lot of it is grief.
Yeah.
Because of the lack of support that we have, because of our history, because of the lack of resource that we have in what, we should have this like extended network that offer that support to us and that, nourish us. And so I feel that grief so much, like I feel heartbroken. I try like as best I can to stay in celebration and joy and like all these beautiful things, because we also deserve to be there, and to rest and have to feel that heavy grief so much. But navigating my own grief and then supporting my children with navigating their grief, which adds there, like that's something that is really brave. I think for those of us that grew up in cultures where grief was not valued or grief was too heavy, it was just like so much other heavy shit going on. So like to add your grief on top of that just felt like maybe
it's too much.
You wouldn't be able to come up from that weight.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this conversation as I was driving, and I realized a lot of when we talk about cultural reasons that a lot of people are trying to do this and I'm not going to say not able, because everybody's able to do this. However, I do always say that there's privilege in this type of parenting that we have to recognize, that people want to fight me on every single time. And understanding that, like for me, I think about liberation, and I think about it in a big context of just liberation from oppressive systems, but also liberation from my child ever feeling the way that I have felt for 42 years, almost 42 years. I'll be 42 in June. Liberation from like pain, liberation from feeling not good enough. I want her to just not even know what those things feel like. And I know I won't be able to control any of that. All I can do is do what I do best. But I just think about how lonely it was for me as a child, and how I felt like nobody saw me, how I felt like it was like I was just like a shell of myself a lot of my life, because I had to accommodate other people in order to be safe. And so I learned that survival technique of, well, who does this person need you to become in order for you to feel safe? And that is oppressive. That is a jail cell, to put yourself into a box for safety reasons in order to survive being oppressed every single day at home. And then at school, and I had to learn this survival technique. And so I'm unlearning all of this trauma now. But when I say liberation, it's also liberation for Gia from ever feeling like something is wrong with her, from ever feeling like no one sees her and no one understands her, because that's how I felt literally until a few years ago. Like nobody gets me. I think differently, and I'm just gonna have to just deal with being alone, And that is a function of these oppressive systems. They want us to feel hopeless and alone,
Mm-hmm.
and want us to feel like we have to do this alone. And that's why I'm so thankful for finding people like you and Damari and Janelle and all these amazing, BIPOC coaches who are out here like, actually, let's talk about this way of parenting from a completely different lens than what's out there.
Yeah.
Because the lens that's being projected when we're talking about positive discipline or positive parenting is really, when we're not talking about it, is really rooted in white supremacy culture. It's so rigid.
Yep.
It's so like there's no room for grace and for understanding.
Yeah.
And I feel like as we approach it from a more liberation context,
Mm-hmm.
we understand that we are humans, that trying to do this in a binary is dangerous and harmful.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, what you're talking about is like you're unlearning those survival techniques by embracing the dualities, by not rejecting white supremacy, by rejecting patriarchy, by rejecting hierarchies that are toxic and oppressive. Like, that is my call to action to parents too, right? And also reframing it the same way that you do, where we know that this is a function of having been oppressed. Like everything that we're seeing in our communities right now in terms of violence against children, violence against ourselves, violence against each other when we're in relationship, and not just physical violence, but emotional violence, and just like
spiritual.
Have these blueprints that we at some point did, right? We had a blueprint before all of this.
Yeah, before colonization.
Yeah. So, and that's like where the grief like bubbles up for me, right? I'm just like, fucking A, because there's so much misinformation and around what conscious parenting is for us, right? For our families. There was this article that came out, I want to say like last week, and it was somebody that was making the association between, and actually like I connected afterwards with this person and we're having a dialogue now, because I want to give context. Like that's what I'm hoping to do, right? That's what you're hoping to do, is like, let's give context to our families, because we have been continuously placed in these boxes, and now it's to the point where we're celebrating these very toxic cycles, right? Like, that they are like, no, you should beat children and you should make them submit. Like that's something that is celebrated sometimes in our community.
A lot of times.
That's the paradigm. That's like the dominant paradigm. And so, for me, I want to give that context. And so there was this article that was making the association between conscious parenting or like attachment parenting or whatever you want to call it, and white wellness culture. And so it was really about her grief. She was like, I feel like I had to reject my culture in order to come into this space where I am respecting my children, where I am feeding them organic foods, where I'm like really thinking about them as humans. And the essay was very personal to her. And I was like, it's not about your story. Like, you have a right to your story and your process and the way that you are coming to this information. But when it's out there in the world, making the association between like, oh, our, Black and brown families don't have access to all of this, when in reality, we did have access to all of this, right?
Yeah.
It
was stripped,
validated by the same people that have oppressed us for 500 years, and they're putting a spin on it, and they're saying this is, science-based or whatever, this is evidence-based. And it's like, you're full of shit. Like there's been a theft, really, is what it's.
There's been a theft.
There's been a theft.
There's some thieves.
And they've convinced so many of us that like never had access to that it doesn't belong to us, that if you go in that direction, that you're rejecting your culture. And I think that's so dangerous.
It's so harmful, but it is a very pervasive sort of thought process, because I recently I'm trying to read more about the decolonization process of the mind. And I ran across a paper, an abstract, and I'll actually share with you. And he was just saying like, it's not just about, he calls it meta colonization. And he's like, it's not just about the land and the body. It's also about the imagination, about the intellect. It is about so much more than we have really been discussing when we discuss parenting in this way. And there is no books, right, that are like, hey, look at all these indigenous people who did that. And that's who the issue is. The theft. The issue is, okay, I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to call it attachment parenting, when really it's ancestral. It's indigenous. It's what people, in Africa did, but before anything, And I read something recently, and they were just like, moms, it was just such an absolute term. He said something like, since the beginning of time, moms have been martyrs. And I was just like, no, since colonization, because before colonization, we had villages. Yep. We had people understanding that community raises a child, not just two people or one person. It is a community of people that raises a child. And the thing that we see as attachment parenting is actually really ancestral ways of doing.
Oh no, I think I lost you.
Did it freeze?
For a second, but I can hear you now.
What this tribe is doing is actually what these folks are talking about. They named it something different, basically colonized it, and then put it out there and appropriated it and said, now we are the gatekeepers of this. That's why I'm trying to do my certification, because I'm looking at all of this work. And if you look at it, it is not culturally responsive at all. It does not take these cultural issues into account. It does not take the fact that even in, the Latinx community, that all the healing started out of protection for their children. Just like with us, it was out of protection to keep these kids alive, right? You couldn't look at a white person in the eye. You couldn't speak out of turn. You had to make sure that your child, who might be sold away from you at any moment, acts like, like always follows the rules, is very obedient, is very compliant, does not have a mind of their own, because having a mind of your own will get you killed. So that's where that came from, right? And then this generation after generation. And I sat down one day and I looked at, okay, we had the enslaved parents. And then we also, after that, after Reconstruction, then it was just like Black people was getting killed like hotcakes for the least infraction, for nothing, right? So then we have parents who have to deal with that. They were just like, okay, now we're free, but we're not, because we can be killed at any moment. So you still have to be obedient and compliant and follow directions and do not question anything. And also, these white people are better than you.
Yeah.
And then there was civil rights movement, huh?
Like if you've seen the 13th, or like you've known how this has continued, like there's still this I don't know, like it's ongoing. Like this colonization and this oppression is ongoing, and they are like grasping at straws at this point, because so many of us, I think.
Yeah, they're grasping at straws. This is why we have all these laws coming out. I really do believe that all the laws all the policies that are being put out by these politicians around schooling is because they see that Gen Z was just like, fuck all of these rules. Yeah. Nothing is real. All the rules are fake. It's giving enslavement. I'm not doing this. Yeah. And so they're just like, these kids are starting to see the lie. So we now need to miseducate the Gen Alpha and all the other generations outside of that. We have to make sure that the miseducation is there. We have to make sure that the oppression is there. We can't allow these kids to know the truth. Yeah. I believe that's the issue, because we got to, whiteness and colonization and capitalism will always preserve itself. Yeah. It will always figure out a way to preserve itself, especially like you said, grasping at straws, because like Gen Z is out here like, no, bitch, like, no, you're not finna work on weekends. Have you lost? No, I'm not doing it. And also fire me. Okay. Fire me. So like they see the shift in children who are just like standing up to educators when they don't want to be spoken down to. And it's still taking adults. Adults are still like, what? This generation of kids, man, what's going on? They're being liberated. Get with it or get lost. I don't know what to tell you. It's not going to stop. No. Not as long as people like Leslie and I exist.
Yeah. Yeah. They're divesting, right? Like we see so much of this generation. Our generation, I feel like, is like in the middle, right? Where we're like, okay, we did, and like I invested in this shit for a long time.
Oh my God.
Right? I'm just like,
I wanted to be in corporate. I was like, yes, I want to be a CEO one day. I want to be in corporate. I want to work my way up the ranks.
Yeah.
Girl, bye.
it's Catholic too, because that's the way, you know what I mean? Like all of it, like religion, like a whole other thing. And so like, but you have to name it too, because that is the way, that is like the tool
Yeah.
so many of our families. And we still have so many families saying, you know, this is the way, the truth, and the light, or whatever, when like really it's optional.
Yeah. Right.
You know, and if there's going to be like any dogma followed, then I hope that it's one that is connecting and not divisive, which this has been for so long. But we are like seeing some people divesting, and something that I heard somebody say once, and I don't remember who, I wish I could credit them, but I didn't come up with this, is that, you know, we cannot replace toxic systems and oppressive systems with individuals, with good-hearted individuals, with
Nope.
well-intentioned individuals. Like they have to be replaced by entire systems. So like the things that you are build, you know, what you are building and the curriculum that you're building for BIPOC folks to train, right? Somebody was asking about the certification. I was like, well, that's what Yolanda is actually building right now, because there isn't this already. But so I'm like, now I don't remember what I was saying, because now I want to talk about your
Listen.
Same. My ADHD
just goes. It just a thought would just like fly out of my brain. I'm just like, I was just talking.
I remember what I was saying. So
okay.
have to replace those systems with other systems, and that's what we're creating. We're creating these other systems. And so it's not us, you know, in a nonprofit or whatever, which is how I found myself initially, being a part of these like nonprofits and like drowning
Yeah.
systems, where I'm just like, you're not listening to what needs to be told. Like you're not listening to this, because you're so invested in this system that is keeping people oppressed and keeping you above them.
Invested and gatekeeping for it, and will continue to, right? And until the rug is pulled off one and they realize, they look up and they're just like, the system isn't there anymore. And it will happen, y'all.
Yeah.
It will happen. It may not happen in my lifetime, but I'm gonna keep fighting until it does. But part of what I do is when I do, like for my conference, for instance, when I think about community, it cannot just be us in silos and these parenting things. It's just being like, okay, parent, listen to me because I have all the answers. I do not have all the fucking answers, y'all. Everybody's not gonna want to follow me. I'm a little bit radical. I cuss. Like everybody, I may not be everybody's cup of tea. So what I want to do is figure out like, who are my people that I could help disseminate like this liberation, you know, philosophy out. And let me get with Latinx parenting. Let me get with positive and purposeful parenting, because we have to do this together. The fact that we are still trying to do everything in silos is part of the problem.
Yeah.
Like when I think about whenever I put together my conference, I'm just thinking of like community. This is how we get free, by different voices, different lived experiences, different people coming together with pretty much the same premise, but saying it in different ways, attracting people that I'm not able to attract, and being like, let's talk about this. How do we get free together? Because all of us, everyone, not just BIPOC folks, white people are also oppressed by these systems.
Yeah.
It keeps you from knowing yourself. It keeps you from trusting yourself, and from getting the cultural context about who you are. Because as we know, to be a white person, you had to give up. Back in they gave up their cultural backgrounds.
Yeah.
And it was stripped from my people, probably stripped from your people as well. So now I'm on a mission to like reclaim all of that information, girl, and finding out that I was like 29% like colonizer. I was like, girl, bye. Where the DNA at? I thought I was going to be a little bit more, but no, I am almost a quarter European.
Yeah.
And it's just like you start to go down these paths of understanding yourself. And that's another part of grief, because then I had to look at, what does that mean for me?
Yeah.
What does that mean for like my heritage? It's somewhere down the line, somebody was really harmed in my lineage. And that was hard for me. So then I had to think about, do I embrace this part of my lineage? Or, you know, and because it is part of me, Irish, girl, Swedish, got the nerves to have some Viking up in there. I'm just like, what's going on? You know, we're a rainbow coalition up in here.
I'm like, I see the Viking.
Over here got the straight up rainbow coalition up inside of me. So I'm just like, what do I do with all of these informations? Because I really don't know yet. Yeah. But what I do know is that it did help me to feel better about myself. Just knowing like, you know, 50-something% Nigerian. I'm just like, okay, like now what does that mean?
Yeah.
What how can I learn more about myself, and reclaiming that as part of my cultural tradition, helping Gia learn about these things now, and that's why my house is full of African stuff. So I'm just like, we gonna start this journey now for you.
Yeah.
And I, again, like I said, it's a liberation from more than just oppression, but like from pain, from grief. I mean, we always gonna feel these things, but I don't want her to feel them in the context of me doing that to her, like
Yeah.
putting that inside of her, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, something that you touched on right now was just like the power of really stepping into your identity, right? Regardless
Yeah.
of whether that identity has, everything has complexity. Like nobody comes from a lineage where there was no harm done. Like that's just
Yeah.
identity. That's just not humans, right?
It's not even.
At some point, you have to also not give up, but like release so much of the pressure to like cognitively figure it out,
Yeah.
be really comfortable operating from a place of I know myself because I know my heart. I know my
Mhm.
because I know my people. I know myself because I know my intentions, and I know myself because I know that, I have cycles to break here for my lineage. There is something here to heal, and I am being called to heal that. And all I'm doing is heeding that call.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can stop that, at least for me, right? It's like we're gonna keep moving in that direction, and we're gonna
Always.
keep joining together with that recognition that it goes beyond um just like what land you came from, right? Like we all lineage doesn't, like ancestral lineage doesn't end, right? If we believe in evolution, like it just doesn't end. Like we actually belong to the earth. Like we actually belong to,
Yeah.
right? And so things like reconnecting back to the land, right, and
Yeah.
living in indigenous ways, like it reminds us of our place and our space in the universe. Not to sound like woo woo or whatever, but it does, and it places us in a state of like humility with each other also, which I find really valuable. Because we don't approach very many things with humility. We approach them with like a lot of rigidity and a lot of binaries, and there's
Ownership.
yeah.
Yeah. And parenting is one of those things that people approach from an ownership perspective.
Yes.
And I know that in the Black community, for me, that was the most powerful part of doing this work. If we know our history, so to really go backwards and be like, I'm going to continue the path of a colonizer.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's just so hurtful. It's just so hurtful.
Yeah.
Our children are not property, and to just treat them as such really just it really to me is an affront to the abuse and the dehumanization that our ancestors went through. So for me, a big part of this was fully rejecting all those things that colonizers did to keep Black people oppressed, and embracing the things that are indigenous, which is love, acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
which is community, right? And and learning to have grace for myself through this process was really, really hard.
Yeah.
I told someone recently, I was just like, the biggest part is that, my family has a history of just abuse, and I'm trying to stop it here. Like, and I'm not just talking about abuse like from children, but like physical abuse, between adults,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. And so we just come from just like this really chaotic background sometimes. I'm just looking at some of the stuff, some of our family pathology. I'm just like, damn,
Yeah.
a lot of chaos, a lot of harm.
Yeah.
And I had to think about it in context, though. A lot of those stuff is not because anyone is inherently bad. It's because it's a reaction of oppression.
Yeah.
So I'm still, I'm a Black single parent, a woman. The I just read the other day that I think it was Black women are 40% more likely to be sex trafficked. Like all of these stats against,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, I still live under oppressive systems, and I have to choose every single day not to let the ancestors behind me sort of dictate what I'm going to do to my children.
Yeah.
What I want to reach back even further I want to go all the way back and be like, I need that energy. I want that ancestral energy. I don't want the energy of enslavement and reconstruction. It was too dangerous for them.
Yeah.
I want the energy of the people who were living free and liberated. And so I'm always holding back the other ones, though, the people who are just used to harm.
Yeah.
And so when Gia does something and I'm pausing, it's like me just being like, just call in those other ones. I have to call in the energy of the ancestors from way back. And then I think of myself now as a future ancestor, as someone who is ushering in a whole new era for my descendants, you know, and I want to be a future ancestor that someone is just like, I want that energy. I want to call her energy in. And it's hard though, because I have to now unlearn all this shit so I'm not toxic.
You're like, you're deprogramming your DNA at the same time as you're reprogramming it. And I feel like that's physiologically, that's labor. And I think people don't recognize this, that like a lot of trying to do at the emotional, physical level with our children and connecting with our children and each other, right? Because again, we're building blueprints, not just in the way that we engage with them, but the way that we engage in the world altogether, in every space that we occupy and in every relationship that we're in. And so I feel like people don't see that it's physiologically like so much labor. Like, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And, you know, one of the things that is extra exhausting, I don't do this very often. Like my stats in my presentation sometimes are very outdated because I'm scared of looking up new ones. Like, I'm like, how bad, you know, and oftentimes they're not getting better. Which to me is like, you know, I'm just like, this is so urgent. Like what we're doing is so urgent. One of the stats that came up just in the last year that I felt like really, really struck by, and that still sits with me because I was this child, is, you know, the Latina adolescents that were living at home in the pandemic, the suicide rates increased by 100%. And I'm just like, I would have, if that was me, if that had been 14, 15-year-old Leslie, who was cutting, not to die, but to distract from
release pain.
That's what it was. Like, it wasn't for like, oh, it's for attention. It's like, no, in that moment, you don't want, like, it's too much to feel that disconnection, you know? And so that might, like, my mom and I have had so much disconnection in our past and our history, and still like we're moving through it. But I think about myself at that age, and I don't think I would have been able to do that. I would not have been able to stay at the house. I would not have been able to stay maybe even in my body, or have not, you know, would not have wanted to stay in my body. And so for me, so much of this work is also honoring that, you know, little girl through trying to prevent other people from experiencing that. I don't want anybody to experience that disconnection at that level that would cause them to harm their bodies and to not see a future. You know, it really breaks my heart to know that that's happening all fucking around us though. You know, like
all around us.
Right. Like I saw one day, I was driving here, and on the street corner, I saw like a Latina young girl like being yanked by her mother. And she was just like, you know, trying to get away. And I was like, stopped there, and I was just watching this, and I was like, this feels purposeful, like for me to be witnessing this, because it's still everywhere, right? Like we in my house, at least, I'm just like, this is, and it gets really fucking hard too. I'm not saying that it doesn't, right? But I see the results of the way that I'm parenting now that I have a year old, and I'm just like, okay, this gives me so much hope. And then I look around and I'm like, this still, like, we're still very much in the minority. And
oh my gosh,
you know, I like look at our followings or whatever, and I'm just like, it's really nothing, right? Like I'm like, it's really,
in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing.
Huh?
In the grand scheme of things, it's nothing, because we know the cultural backgrounds of the reason why our people continue on the path. You know, I when the whole thing, you know, the infamous slap happened, and I'm looking at all these people who are hella indignant around two grown ass people, you know, two grown rich people who I don't give a shit about. I'm just gonna say it. Having their tiff and taking that side and taking the side of violence is never the answer. I'm just like, but you out here killing your children's spirit all day, beating that out of them.
I was
like, who are you people?
Here, like, I'm not even gonna say anything here, because exactly what you're saying.
Like, who are you people? Like, first, why is it only reserved for adults? And then and the sad part is, when I think about these liberation movements, and I'm gonna start calling motherfuckers out. When I think about these liberation movements and how they do not include children, I'm just like, how can we march and then not include children in the fact that there should be no harm to them at home? Like, we have to liberate our minds at home. We have to liberate our children at home. Suicide rates for Black children are extremely high. They went up during the pandemic as well. And you got to think about, you go to school, You're being targeted at school by teachers, by Popo, what they call them now, 12. You're getting targeted in policies at school around your hair, regarding classism and all this stuff. And then you walk out of school, you're being targeted by police, by regular people, Karens who just don't see your humanity. And then you go home, and that's not safe. You go home and you're being cussed out, yelled at, being treated like an enslaved person, doing all the cleaning, and being told that you don't have a voice, that you don't have a say, that you just need to shut up and take what is given to you.
Yeah.
I mean, can you, where are these children supposed to be safe at? It just breaks my heart because there's no safe space for a lot of Black children.
Yeah.
There's no safe space. They walk out the door and it's not safe. Then they walk inside the door and it's still not safe. And then we're wondering why there's all these behavioral issues at school. We're wondering why children show up hella angry, ready to fight at school, because they're tired of adults' bullshit. Yeah. They're tired of being treated like they don't matter. So, but how does a child get that? How are they supposed to tell an adult that when adults don't listen?
Yeah.
Adults don't listen. All they can do is act out, do the things that, talk back, all the things that adults don't like. And instead of us being like, okay, what is really going on? What's going on behind the scenes? We're just like, don't talk back to me. Like, bitch, see?
You and I had this conversation. I called you after my interview with Amara Negra, right? I don't know if she's going to pop in here or not.
Yeah.
I was just like, she's pregnant and she's already planning. Like, there's already this idea of what you deserve. There's already this idea of how they are imperfect. They are, resource drainers. Like, I don't know, but just like the overall view of children that we have in the society, especially Black children, is horrific. Like, it's just fucking awful. Like, I'm like,
and that's a dark skinned Afro-Latina.
Like, I remember I was walking through a school once when I was teaching at a school, and this white teacher was with a group of probably like 24 mostly brown children. There was like a couple of white kids in there, but it was mostly brown children. She's fucking like yelling, like shouting at them in this hallway, and like didn't see that I was behind her watching this. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, and nobody's gonna, like, no one's gonna say anything to that. These kids, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I was like in shock, right? And they were like moving out of line. So I was just like, oh my gosh, I did end up telling the administrator. I was like, I don't know who this teacher is, but like, this was her classroom. And like, I saw her yelling at these kids, but I don't know what happened after that. Like, I have no idea. There's no reprimands. Like, so many, even teachers, right? Even, I would say, I don't, there's really, really good teachers, but you go into that role for the same role as cops become cops sometimes. Like, that's why you're in that role, like, you're wanting this sense of power, this sense of like, I don't know, because you're who is marginalized, and you're either like exhibiting saviorism, right?
Yeah.
Or you are unintentionally, but like very clearly perpetuating oppression.
Well, I mean, if we can get to a whole discussion around compulsory school and that is inherently anti-Black, inherently oppressive, inherently ableist. I can talk about that all day long, but I know you ain't got that much time. Okay.
I tell people, like, I need to warn y'all, like, this could go on 3 hours, because Yolanda and I have been on the phone sometimes for like hours.
Just keep talking, because there's so much to talk about. And what I don't want, though, is to ever make it feel like this is not something that we can overcome, that it's not something that, because even with teachers, I have to remind myself, teachers are people that may not have done the work to heal their own childhood trauma. All that shit comes up. If you're a parent, you're a teacher, if you're around children, they're going to pull those unhealed parts out of you.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't want to do the work to confront those unhealed parts and do the work to unpack them, lay them out, and be like, damn, I got some shit I need to like go to therapy for or do some shadow work with, and that's what's scary to me. And that's why, Gia goes to her developmental preschool. She goes there with other autistic kids. She goes there with people who are used to working with autistic kids. And that makes me feel really safe. She's very happy. But ain't no way in HE double hockey sticks, I'm putting her in a public school out here in Arkansas where it's still legal to hit children. Because y'all need to be putting money on my books, okay? I'll burn that motherfucker down. I do not play about mine. I'm not a non-violent person when it comes to those kind of things. Somebody's getting hurt. I'm just gonna say it. So I'm not gonna gonna have my pressure up and put my daughter in a harmful situation because I can see already. I saw somebody close to me and how she was punished punitively for being for her ADHD. Like a lot of these kids, especially disabled children, are so abused at school. Then they come home and they have parents who make them mask. We have parents who are ableist, who think that their child is just being lazy because they refuse to understand this child's diagnosis or even to go get them diagnosed. We just have so much because of capitalism, because of patriarchy, because of white supremacy. It gets funneled down into our heads and into our parenting. And we start to look at things like, okay, your child won't clean the room, they must be lazy. Or because if y'all saw my room right now, you'd be like, hoarders? Hi. My room is full of clothes on the ground everywhere because I have a hard time keeping up with those things because of my ADHD.
Yeah.
And so your child may just need help. But because we feel like children need to be self-sufficient at like 2, right? They need to be potty trained. They need to be off the boob. They need to be basically babies. We start getting them ready to be exploited in the capitalist system very, very young.
Yes.
We always tell them that they're not valuable unless they're working or moving and they can't rest, right? You can't have a weekend where you just get to sleep in. You got to get up and wash these damn walls.
Yeah.
It's so much that we have to let go of.
Yeah.
But it is possible to let go of it if you take a pause and you're just like, is this serving the greater good of the community? Like, has this type of parenting really been effective in the Black community?
Yeah.
In the brown community? Has it been effective?
No.
Have we seen financial gain from it? Have we seen wealth increase? Have we seen well-being get better? Have we seen I just want people to think about that. Have we seen that this has done anything but keep us oppressed?
Yeah. No. Oh my God. There's so much that you just said. I'm just like,
I know I talk a lot.
No, it's good. It's good.
A Gemini energy.
I love it. I love you. Whew. I want people to like sit with this for a little bit because there's one thing to talk about it and there's another to actually like embody what we're talking about. Right? Because I don't know. Again, like we don't have the blueprint. We don't have a lot of foundation. I like what you said earlier about having to reach back, but like reach further back, right? Because
a lot further back, yeah.
That is like what is offering the strength in those moments. I had this really beautiful moment where I felt seen by my grandmother who passed away like over a decade ago, like 15 years ago. But I was holding my son and I like walked across a wall where a picture of her was there. We have a little ancestor altar, like right when you walk in the door. So like I have pictures of my ancestors all over, but there was this picture of her holding my uncle who also has passed away. And he was like the same age as my son. And I was holding my son on my hip and looking at my grandmother and like really, it was weird. Like I just had this like moment. Here we are together, you know, like we're here together and you're here with me and you see me because there you are and you are me, right? Like it's really, and so I've just been affirmed by so many little moments like that, you know, and trying to connect back to the joy, because I think a lot of times also, you know, speaking on like the saviorism, like they do see our people as not having the capacity for some of this shit. Like they see our people as not being smart enough, or just like, you know, I do this activity when I go into the professionals intensive that I do, and I ask people to drop a list of like a lot of stereotypes of our families, and it's really revealing.
Yeah,
that conversation goes. And we like process, you know, what the experience of that is too, because a lot of these stereotypes are things that we carry in our bodies, but we don't always speak out loud. You know, it's just like and how we see children, and so speaking it out loud sometimes, and just like really acknowledging without shame, because none of the invitation that Yolanda and I have for the parents that we work with is shaming in any way, right? Like I feel like that really drives me away sometimes from you know, parenting accounts. And I think like one of the posts that I had recently, I said like chancla culture is lazy parenting. And I think that's often true, but it's not always true. Like there's always context that we need to include. So,
No, yeah.
you know, I don't want to like say that like I've never done that, right? But I don't ever want a parent to feel shamed by their lack of capacity in moments to be able to do something better.
Oh my God.
Lazy parenting
Never.
or about like the constant justification of to oppress children, just like, you know, no, this is what they need. Like you have the internet, you could, you know, like you have you may not have like a lot of time and a lot of resources, and at the same time like setting the intention, right? And just like the simple act of like remembering ourselves as children and having empathy and compassion for that version of ourselves like should generate something, right? It should generate the hopefully like we want people to move in that direction. But there is no shaming that I feel
No.
because it's not going to help. Like that's not going to help anybody when it's approached from a shaming place, right? And actually, it's like further wounding to the inner child.
Also, if we continue to not discuss the cultural aspects, but also the aspects of privilege in this type of parenting, I mean, some parents literally, I watched a documentary and it was about a daycare. She was a 24-hour daycare, a Black woman in New York, and how kids would be there for 12 hours. Their parents working three jobs. A lot of them, obviously, Black and brown parents. And, you know, these moms mostly would go to work and drop their kids off in the crack of dawn. This daycare provider is like a second mom, getting them on the bus, doing their homework, getting them off, like that kind of stuff. And they would come get their kids at night, right? They're there for 12 hours or so. Come get them at night just to go home and go to sleep. They never see their children.
Yeah.
And it's like that parent is always going to be like, when do I have time for this shit?
Yeah.
When do I have time? I just need my child to go to sleep because I need some sleep. I just need for my child to just eat this food and don't ask me about McDonald's. I just don't have it.
Yeah.
They're exhausted because they don't have the systemic support is just not there. The money is just not there. The familial support is not there. So they're the ones who are like, what do you want from me? Like, I cannot do this, right? And so for those parents, because I know probably one of them watching them right now, a spare minute, you know, of the day, it's like, I don't know what to tell you, sis, because there's times where I feel like I don't have time either. But what I did and what I continue to do is in those little moments, I get 10 minutes here, maybe 15 minutes there, I just connect with myself. It's not even about Gia in that moment.
Yeah.
It's just about me trying to figure out how to regulate my mind, how to control my emotions, how to be present for myself. And I think if we start this there, we start just learning how to be more emotionally connected to ourselves, learn how to control ourselves when we feel overwhelmed. It's a great start.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to ever say that, because there's levels to this shit. That's what Damari likes to say. There's levels to this, right? If you make the commitment to not hit, like I've made the commitment to not hit.
Yeah.
I have not yet mastered the not yelling part. Okay. So there's levels. I yell and every time I do, I apologize. It's just like this sometimes.
Yeah.
And that happens when I am looking at my bank account. I'm just like, shit. That happens when I have all these things to do and no time. And you know, Gia, and I'm trying to like quickly market my conference on Instagram, and Gia's like grabbing my hand because she wants attention. And I'm just like, leave me alone. Like, just for a moment, let me do my job. Yeah. And these are the moments that's hard because I'm by myself. I don't have anyone here that I can tap out. And I have to figure out that balance of how can you make sure that you're not being harmful, but also setting up boundaries for when you do need a little bit of space from your kid, you know? It's just hard. So what I've done is just in those moments, I make it about me. I make it about showing up for myself, showing up for like allowing myself to feel grief, feel sorrow, feel joy. Whatever I'm feeling, I just allow myself to feel it and not stuff it down like I'm used to doing. And starting there has been great for me, someone who did not have a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful now because I do have more time now.
Yeah.
But before, my mom had to tell me once, she was like, you don't spend enough time with Gia. I was working like 3 jobs just a year and a half ago. I had, Parenting Decolonized. I worked full time as customer service rep, $15 an hour. I wasn't making any money. And I was working as a social media consultant. So Gia she was home with me. And my mom came over and she was just like, she wants your attention. I was like, I don't have it. I don't have it. That's why you're here. Pay attention to her so I can work, right? I'm like yelling at my mom at this point. And then she's later on, she's like, listen, you have to figure out what to do. You can't keep going like this. She needs more of you. And I had to quit that customer service job. And do you know how scary that shit was? Like, I needed that money, but I had to figure out, I knew that was the thing that was keeping me from being present with her. Because so I had to just throw everything into Parenting Decolonized. I really did. Had to just step out on faith and being like, okay, sis, like, you just got to figure this shit out with Parenting Decolonized because your daughter is suffering and you're suffering. And that parent is the one that is like, what are you talking about? There's no privilege. What are you talking about that everyone can do this easily? Mm-hmm. This shit is not easy. It's not easy. You got trauma, you ain't got no time, and you probably ain't got no money.
Yeah.
So we need to make space for those parents and support them and not make them feel like no matter what, you should treat your child well no matter what. Of course you should, but do you like the hand motions? Can you do it?
Yeah.
When you're carrying a whole bag of oppression on your back?
No.
Can you do it well?
No.
Absolutely not. We need to support these parents better.
We need to, and we need, like, there needs to be, like, money there. Like, that's, like, what...
There needs to be money.
Right? Like, I feel like we have had so much, like, work, I think, in trying to, like, convince the dominant paradigm sometimes that, like, we're, like, this resource is so necessary and so, like, worthy of not just the time investment, but, like, the financial investment.
We need some money.
We need some money. Like, we really do. Like, I'm seeing, like, so many white parenting influencers with all of the resources,
all the sponsors, all the grants.
I had a coaching client, and I think I told you this once we were on the phone. I remember walking around this parking lot down here and being on the phone with you and telling you this. But one of the coaching clients I had, I don't take individual coaching clients. I've only had a couple just in the last year because it's a lot. And you can only take it like if you've already gone through the classes, right? Because there's so much information held in those classes that, like, once we get to the point where we're coaching, I want to make sure that, like, it's purposeful. Yeah. And so she said that she had been listening to this one parenting author, who I think you know who I'm talking about, like this one very celebrated white parenting author. And she was like, I've tried all of these tools. Like, I've really tried to do all of these tools. And
yeah.
And I feel like I'm failing. And I was like, well, it's not that you can't do the tools that makes you that you're listening to this white parenting author. And it's like, she's setting up the expectations for you, but you have trauma. You are like, you are brown. You are a single parent. Like, there's not be addressed if you don't have at least some of that lived experience, right? And so while all of that sounds really nice and flowery and good, and yeah, I want to get down on my kids' level, and yeah, I want to have empathy, right? Like, I have been in those moments where it's like, I'm not getting home till like 8:30, and I'm just like, I have 3, so they're just on top of me. And I'm just like, please, I wish I had like a remote, just like, please, just pause. Just pause.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's really, really hard. And like, the gentleness that I think that we need to extend to our children is not possible without gentleness extended to ourselves.
For the parenting community. We can't be advocates for children while shaming parents. I refuse to be part of that sort of community that's just like making posts and they're so absolute. There's no nuance. And it just makes me upset because that's how we push people away from this.
Yeah. Because
they feel like they have to be perfect. But again, and someone mentioned, like, if you're a disabled parent, the capacity you have when you're in pain, the capacity you have for patience is definitely going to decrease, right? Now, these are some of the things that we're going to be discussing for my next parenting conference. It is May 20th through the 22nd. And Leslie is going to be offering her workshop, which normally costs what?
$1,000.
Really?
$1 million. So it's I'm like, how much? We have like equitable pricing, so I don't know, like 57, right? But that's like for one workshop, and we have this workshop coming up this weekend that is that price, and it comes with all kinds of stuff. But the value that Yolanda is talking about, tell them more about the value.
The workshop Leslie is doing just one of the workshops. There's 8, and hers is about reparenting for yourself for liberation. But it's a 3-day conference that is going to talk about teaching to transgress and how we can be better advocates for our children's education. We're going to talk about how to collaborate with your children at home, like especially as a parent with ADHD. I need some systems in place. So Melissa from HR Mom is going to be doing a workshop around that for the parent who is out here like, I don't know where to start. I've been whipping my children since they were 6, and they don't listen to me when I speak. Damari is going to be offering, Damari Dickinson from Purposeful and Positive Parenting, she's going to be offering a workshop about transitioning, because that's a big deal. If you have started your parenting journey being very punitive, being, whipping your kids, yelling at them a lot, being really oppressive, it's going to feel like a big hill to climb over to start going over to conscious parenting. So she's going to really help parents figure out, like, how can I transition? What does that look like for me? We have Danielle from Unfit Christian. She's going to be talking about how religion has been used to oppress children, and how we need to start uncoupling those, start really telling the truth, because that's not the truth of what people say is in the scripture is not true. So she's going to be talking about how religion has been used to oppress, and how we can liberate ourselves from that. So it's 3 days of just amazing speakers. I'm going to drop a link here in the comments. Leslie also has, what the hell is happening? Leslie also has a link. Is it going to be in your bio?
I will. I'm going to add it to our bio after this, but I'll also share it in our stories when we are going to post this conversation on our feed. So I'll make sure that it's linked there. And I mean, you can't open it, but I'll make sure it's linked in the bio.
Yeah, I mean, it's 3 days. Early bird ticket for the 3-day conference is $159. I do have a split pay option for early bird, so you can pay it in 2 payments. And I did that because, I know how that shit feels, where you're just like, that's a lot of money for, me right now. And the thing is, another big part of that I kind of just want to bring up real quick is Leslie and I always have a hard time when we're talking about charging people for things. We want to be equitable as possible, but we also want to honor our labor and the fact that we are parents. A bitch got bills. Like, I can't be giving away everything for free, right? And I also think, thinking about how we are exploited often in the corporate world, and how we are never paid what we are worth, like never. I do not want to perpetuate that onto my speakers. So all of my speakers are paid. I cannot stand when I keep getting emails from people like, you want to be a part of my conference? This is great exposure. I look at your audience and just like, it would be exposure for you. Like, I have a bigger audience than you. This is not helpful for me. Are you paying me or not? Like, if you're not going to pay me, then don't stay out of my inbox.
You seen the memes where it's like somebody like eating like it's an empty bowl and they have a spoon and they're like me eating all the exposure that
I'm just like, because I can pay bills with that. Y'all, I cannot. You wanting exposure to my audience. Like, stop playing with me. I know I've been in social media. I've worked for startup companies. Don't try to do me. I know marketing, okay? Anyway.
Yeah.
So when we are doing this, I try to price it in a way where I'm honoring myself, but also I have to pay people.
Yeah.
I'm paying a Black person to help me put this, a Black woman, to help me manage the whole thing. I'm paying all of my speakers. And so, I'm getting some comments and I'm getting some people who are sending me emails and just like, this is expensive. And I'm just like, I'm okay, but I will be offering scholarships.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are sending me money for sponsored tickets. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. I understand that it's going to be inaccessible for some people, but I guarantee you it is, when we talk about doing this work, we have to practice doing these things. We have to practice being patient, pausing, we have to figure out, who am I learning from? Who am I modeling my parenting? You know, like, who are those voices that I'm allowing into my inner circle?
Mhm.
And I really believe that, like, when I put together these conferences, I'm helping parents to figure out who to follow, who to listen to, that are not the dominant narrative.
Yeah.
People who look like them.
Yeah.
You know, I have a Muslim woman, brown woman over here. I have all kinds of people who are.
Who is just like a diamond to me is Nikolai Pizarro.
Yes.
Who's going to be talking about decentering schooling. And I fucking love her so much.
Raisin Readers, shout out.
We are on like a ongoing like comadre like text basis, and I just like she shares with me some of the things that happen like behind the scenes of Raisin Readers, and I'm just like, you are so incredible. I wish that like, and she has a book too called Ring the Alarm, so go and get Nikolai Pizarro's book called Ring the Alarm. It was like the only parenting book that I found that wasn't written by a white person when I first started. So
she's going to be a speaker at the conference. I'm so happy. Yeah. She was the last person. I was just like, please let me please do this. You know, because her voice is needed.
Yes.
Hey girl, yeah, nurturing learners.
Hey.
We'll be there. And I'm so excited to have all these different lived experiences and voices and cultures and sexualities and genders. You know, I'm so excited for it because it is so necessary. And the biggest one for me, honestly, is Marley Richards, Akila Richards' daughter, who is going to be on here. Like, listen, I was raised by a parent who transitioned to conscious parenting. A Black woman who transitioned to conscious parenting. And this is how that went for me. This is what I want parents to know about raising a child this way. We need to listen to kids more. So I wanted to have, Marley is 17, I believe. So I wanted to make sure I had the voice of a young person really speaking to their experience being raised this way, but also her mom transitioned to this parenting. She did not start out that way. She started out punitive. So I wanted to have that narrative in there. And so I really hope that, you know, y'all get a ticket. It helps me a lot, keep this thing going. And it helps me to pay other BIPOC creators and to help them keep their empires going. Because again, this is not just about me and my business, this is about a community.
Yeah.
And this community is gonna take this liberation mission and just shoot it out into the world and hopefully it doesn't matter if it's one person every 30 days, even one person not hitting their child, learning how to pause and be patient and be more conscious is a win for me. It is a huge win for me.
Yeah.
And it makes me so happy whenever y'all send me messages like, you've helped me to not be like my parents. You've helped me to be a better parent, because that's all I want. And it's for the kids. I love y'all, but it's really for the children.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is for the children and for your inner children, right? Like that, it takes your inner child into account too when we say that. Like,
oh my gosh,
we still have very much that part of ourselves that needs that same kind of validation and honoring and all of that our children need as well. There are people saying in here that they know what they want for Mother's Day and that they will be at the conference because they want for Mother's Day. I just had a thought, like, if you want to buy this for one of your friends as a Mother's Day present, I feel like that would
great Mother's Day present.
I feel like that's a good thing to give. I would love that if somebody was like.
And also, thank you for the marketing thing, because I had not considered that.
That's where I'm going to. I'm like, it
is a great gift. It's a great gift, especially for the mom who just doesn't have it right now. Who doesn't even. I remember my mom made fun of me for reading books on parenting. She was like, "You read a book?" And I was just like, "Well, yeah." Like, I want to understand how to be a good parent.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get that sort of like that scoffing, like, how come you don't know? And I'm just like, you didn't know? Do you know how broken I am, man? Do you know that how much I have to get over?
I know. I'm like, do you want to see my therapy bill? Do you want to see it?
So yeah, I read a book. And so some people don't even feel right getting these kind of things. They feel like they're going to be made fun of by their peers or by their people. Yeah, great gift. And I really am thankful to y'all for supporting the conference and for showing up here today. I didn't get a chance to read through all the comments, but there's definitely going to be someone for everyone at this conference, talking about disability, talking about unschooling. There's actually a mom, Hillary, forget her name, love, forgive me, but she is going to be doing one on how to, if you're working full time and you want to unschool, this is how you do it. So it's something for everyone at this conference, and I really hope y'all join. It's going to be amazing. And we're going to have a live DJ like we did before. So I'm going to try my hand again at getting these mega knees ready, and so I can drop it a few times without breaking them, because they're really brittle at this point. I have terrible limbs.
Oh my God.
There will be dancing and music and prizes, and it's gonna be fun. It's fun. It's healing. Oh, and Kelly Nicole Palmer is doing her Reimagine Everything workshop. And if you haven't taken Kelly Nicole Palmer's Reimagine Everything workshop, y'all, when I say that, because that's what we have to do. This is around, what we're doing here is taking the power away from these colonizers who created this lived system. They created all the stuff we live in. We live in their imagination of what this should be like. What we're doing is reclaiming that, and we are going to be doing the reimagining, and we are going to be ushering in okay, princess. We are going to be ushering in a future based on how we, the marginalized people, reimagine equity and liberation. And that's on Friday. And it's a movement workshop, it's a journaling workshop, it is a meditation workshop, and it's going to be amazing, and it's going to help us get into the right headspace before the conference. Hope you can make it too.
I will be there. I will be there. I say that, and then my ADHD is like, what?
You'll get a calendar invite.
I get the emails. So I'm like, as long as I keep getting the emails and it's on my calendar, I'm good. Like, that's the structure I need to make sure that I follow through on my intentions. Because there's so much stuff that I like pay for and sign up for, and then I just like, if I don't put it in my calendar, it's gone. It's just gone.
You don't even want to know.
Yeah, but this is that, because there are, people that are part of this conference, and this is not the first year that this conference has happened too. So I just want to say that, like, this has happened before, and it was real fire. Like, it was so good, and it's going to continue to be good. So I'm super excited and excited to share it. I will share it in our stories throughout the month. Our affiliate link, so if anybody wants to, that
princess,
is she wanting?
She's getting louder and louder. I don't know. Probably hungry.
The volume is just so loud on the other ones. Just like so. Like, how do you get that loud?
Like, princess. Okay, well, thank y'all so much for joining us. If you are like, I didn't catch the link, it is in my bio, and I'm gonna be posting about it. And trust me, y'all about to be sick of me. I need to sell tickets, so I'm about to be just spamming y'all with conference stuff. Get ready.
Go ham. All right. I love you.
Bye. Love you too.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. All right. So just to end, go sign up for the Parenting Decolonized conference, and you can find the link in Yolanda's bio. Buy it for somebody else if you don't want it for yourself, or buy 2 tickets, one for yourself and one for a friend. But this is really important work, y'all. So I really do hope that you will go, that you will take advantage of these resources, of these amazing people. And I will be back in a few hours. I'm actually going to come back on an IG Live on my own. So I'll see you later.